Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen. So I'm the founder, director of the Arts and Healing Resiliency Center, and we are out of a outpatient mental health program actually in Hillsboro, Oregon, about 20 minutes from where I live in Portland. And the Arts and Healing Resiliency Center welcomes you, and our aim is to provide a safe haven for self-expression and also self-creation. And the inspired mission of the center is to honor and practice the caring art of human connection. So since I think it was starting in September, we've been having 3 times a month on a Saturday, Follow Your Art's Heart workshops, Portland, Oregon time, 1 to 2 p.m. on a Saturday, where we have an expressive art workshop, salon, meaning a gathering of people, and a studio to actually do writing and drawing and other activities. And once a month on a Sunday, we have a featured presenter. And I'm so excited that today is Sunday, and we're going to have a special presentation. So I want to introduce you to our presenter. Her name is Dr. Charlene Geltz, and I think for the moment I'm going to stop the share. Perhaps if I do so, you'll also be able to see Charlene. Charlene, you can wave to everybody. Okay, so Charlene is a clinical psychologist, a marriage and family therapist, and a certified group therapist who has also been a certified general education and special education teacher. And she's dedicated to women's empowerment and has a special interest in the use of cinema to highlight psychological and relationship issues. She is the author of the book, Hades Angels, The Transformative Journey of Women Who Love Lifers and Death Row Inmates. So at this point, I'm going to have Charlene begin her presentation, and I'll also be sharing the screen again. Actually, I'm hearing some background noise, so I'm going to be muting those who are not already muted. Okay. For questions, comments, participation in what Charlene will be sharing, there will be time later in the presentation to do that. However, please write down either in the chat or on a piece of paper responses to many of the questions that she's going to be bringing up in the presentation. And Charlene might be adding to what I just said in terms of how to facilitate participation in the workshop. Okay. And right now, what I'm going to do is go back and share the screen. Okay, so thank you, Charlene. I shared with Charlene earlier that I myself personally am very interested in her workshop. So I join you in enthusiastically welcoming her. Oh, can't hear you. Oh, you're muted. Let me make sure that she is not muted. What? Oops.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I'm very happy to be here, and I want to welcome everyone who's taken time out of their Sunday. What happened?
No, you're here. Mm-hmm.
Okay. because there we go, who's taken time out of their Sunday to be together on this beautiful day. I'm in Encino, California, and it's gorgeous out. So thank you again. And I want to make sure that everyone understands that this workshop is not meant as therapy. So if information triggers unfinished business for you, please refer to your own therapist or take it in a different realm. This is meant as information that hopefully will give you an adjunct to your own therapy and spur you to further your own learning about yourself and about love relationships. It's cold and windy in London, I hear. Okay, not it's gorgeous. It would be helpful if you have a paper and pencil available to yourself, so you can write down things that you want to talk about later, and also a couple of exercises, experiential exercises that I have in mind for all of us. So we'll go further for be mine. What does that mean? And I want to preface this little workshop with love is an unseen energy, an intrinsic force, a need for connection that flows to and from all living things. And with that said, I have a beautiful poem. That's a song by The Rose by Bette Midler. It's the heart afraid of breaking that never learns to dance. It's the dream afraid of waking that never takes a chance. It's the one who won't be taken, who cannot seem to live, and the soul afraid of dying that never learns to live. So sexual expression does not have to only be physical either. Erotic energy may radiate from the depths of our being and into the core of our partner and express to something as simple as listening empathically to one another. Sexuality is extremely sensitive and intuitive. A whisper, a caress, can keep us warm throughout the day. To make love, therefore, is a perpetual state of deep understanding and bonding, of connecting. It's a celebration of everything it means to be fully alive. So we need to change. Diane, can you?
Yes.
Yeah. So love and relationships, with that said, we enter the most important contract in our lives without discussing needs or expectations. So that's what I want to do today. Discuss the needs, discuss the expectations, focus on tools that help you move from perhaps a fear of merger or what I call emotional slavery, the fear of losing oneself, to emotional liberation and what I call interdependency and a healthier relationship. What I call 1 and 1 make 3 instead of the merger state of 1 and 1 make 2. So I'm asking you to identify your own internalized barriers to love. What are your beliefs about and your fears about love? Do you have a fear of intimacy, in closeness in relationships? Do you feel trapped or smothered and then perhaps want to get out? Do you feel like you get swallowed up or desperate needs to get your own needs met? Are you drawn like a magnet to the shadow self in relationships? So we're going to identify some new tools. Find your voice in behalf of the self, identify relationship dynamics, and help you move from that state of emotional slavery to emotional liberation. So let's talk about what kind of energy you're attracted to. And what type of energy do you believe you attract? Can you please write down as an icebreaker what you feel you are attracted to? A high energy, calm energy, what kind of energy? Not necessarily the person, but I want to help you think in terms of energy rather than faces and things. So we switch from what a person looks like to what kind of energy that feels to you. What are you attracted to? And what type of energy are you attracts you? And then write down what words describe what it feels like to feel in love. And we'll talk about it in a minute. Is there a lightness of being, like floating on a cloud, or a fear of getting used? Can we just get acquainted a little bit? And if you'd like to volunteer, what kind of energy you've been attracted to? Diane, can you hear anything?
There's some comments in the chat. Do you want to look at that also, Charlene?
Okay. How do I do that? I can't seem to pull it up.
Yeah. So I can read it aloud. Someone said, and if that someone wants to also speak, they can. I do not know how to trust, how to fully trust. And that was also almost as a question too. How do you fully trust? Attracted to high energy with moments of calm.
So it sounds like it goes up and down like a wave. Is there anyone else who wants to share some?
Anyone else want to write in the chat or unmute yourself?
I hear I'm attracted. Nina said, I'm attracted to creative, calm individuals. And that's the only one I got. Yes. And I attract energy that is broken. What does that mean? Broken energy. Does that mean it comes and goes?
Hi, my name is Charmaine. I live in New York. And
Hi.
I thank you for having this workshop. When I say broken energy, I seem to attract many males that are filled with a lot of trauma. And then I find myself trying to overly help instead of allowing the Most High to do the work in them and work beside them. I try to overcompensate for them. And that is, so in terms of them being broken, then it's breaking me.
Oh, yeah. Trauma, recaptivated, re-triggered. Yes. Perhaps your own trauma.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. And I see somebody, Magorska, but I didn't say that right. I've written above Nina. Okay. Nina, I wish I could get yours too. I love fun energy, time to be open and talk honestly. But the energy I attract is always needy people. And I have to be the stronger one. And love, to me, is feeling complete. Complete when you fix someone. Is that what you're saying, Nina? Lorraine.
Lorraine.
Hi, Lorraine.
Hi, I'm Lorraine in London. When I say I feel love makes me feel complete, I mean as in feeling that I've got my soulmate, that we're there for each other through thick and thin. I haven't actually felt what I interpret as love for, wow, got to be a good 8-9 years at least. I've been single for 4 years, but I was in a loveless 6-year relationship, which I think dented my confidence to fall in love again as of now. But to me, love is having your best friend, your soulmate, someone you can lean on and they lean on you, equal 50-50, and that you communicate together. But I do tend to attract people that are needy, that are weaker than me, and I have to be the strong bearer, be it in a relationship or friendship or a relationship. I always seem to be the one that's the stronger of my relationship that I'm in, and it sometimes can get quite frustrating because you want someone that's going to be there to you. So I turned to Christianity to help me solder through. So I had a faith that I could lean on rather than just feel like I'm on my own.
It sounds almost similar to what Charmaine is indicating, to fix someone else. And
yeah, 100%. I gave Charmaine a love heart because I definitely felt like she was talking about me similarly. So thank you, Charmaine, and thank you for listening to me.
So,
Amen.
Yeah, we're stimulating a lot of similarities here. And what does it feel like to be in love? Is it a loss of self, or is it more energized or depleted or drained, a sense of floating? What does it feel like? Is it a high, or is it not? Is it a low? Is there fear that goes along with it? I'm wondering what you have to say about that. Yeah. Think about it. Nina? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just talk instead of typing. Yeah, so I'm also an MFT, and so I work a lot with this with couples. But for myself today, when I feel loved, I feel seen, I feel accepted, I feel appreciated, I feel adored. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then, of course, when you're with that person, it takes a lot of work to stay in a relationship. And this goes back to your other question, I feel like I often attract individuals who want a nurturing mother and often find out that they had a tumultuous relationship with their own mother. So it's a little bit like the fix it that was brought up earlier.
So it sounds like you get seduced.
Yeah.
And what a high that is,
Wonderful, isn't it?
It's a beautiful high that doesn't last for very long. So the opposite would be the extreme of no energy. So we're going to look at the next slide, Diane. And I don't know if you can you pull up the next slide? The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's any reaction, both are transformed, according to Jung. And so we have the energy of friendship, ideally, and the energy of chemistry. So I put these two photos on there. One is from Patrick Swayze's old film. I forgot the name of it.
Yeah, Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. It's, you feel that energy between them. And that's the chemistry we want. It's the seduction, but we also want the friendship, because at some point in time, chemistry wanes. And what we need to make sure we have is friendship. So let's go to the next slide and talk about what is your personal myth, your belief of romantic love. Love is forever, love dies, can't count on love, can't trust it. most superheroes and gods are invulnerable. What makes them superheroes and gods is that vulnerability. But each of them has a secret weakness, or there'd be no stories to tell. Ashley's mother dipped him in the river of invulnerability as a baby. His entire body, except for the heel where she held him. Thus, his one susceptibility gave death a portal. And most of us have many more vulnerabilities than Achilles. What are your weak spots, your Achilles heel? Do you experience of relationships as denial of your own, like Nina said, to meet the needs of others? And Lorraine mentioned that, and Charmaine. What are your beliefs regarding marital relationships and commitment? What have been the barriers to intimacy in your own love relationships? And what does that feel like to be emotionally intimate if you're worried about losing yourself? What happens as the relationship gets serious? Do you assume the responsibility for other people? So let's take a look at the unconscious ties which draw you in. What do you see? All of us are drawn by a common wound that we don't know exists. I've heard each of you who volunteered to speak share a little bit about your own wounds. But there's an internal common wound, an early child narcissistic injury. And that becomes a comfort zone. What you recognized in the other, your soulmate, you saw his pain, maybe you saw his potential, or the Christ in him, or your kindred spirit. Our myths come to us by way of stories, by movies, photographs, unspoken messages of what we hear or feel in the household. So let's take a look on what we see on television and what we have a magnetic draw in romantic love relationships to the unconscious common wound. And often what happens, like Charmaine and Nina and Lorraine have verbalized, you're drawn to that unconscious wound, which I call the shadow. And you give that energy to someone else. You give the strength that is embodied in you, and you apply it like a projection onto someone else. So you see in the other what you deny seeing in yourself and what does not manifest. Your attraction is to one's polar opposite. You have a desire for wholeness, that's the goal, but you give away your wholeness and project it onto someone else. And then they do the same. So you are drawn to their unconscious common wound as well. Their need to be nurtured, to be mothered, and your unconscious need to do that for them. So there's a merger state instead of two independent personalities from their own strength. So, okay, Catherine, I'm just going to share that I am attracted to warm people, but seem to attract cold people. How interesting. So maybe you give your own warmth away, and your shadow is the cold, what you term coldness, may be the boundaries that you need to define. We'll take a look at that. And are you drawn to a controller, someone who wants to control you and has that need to control someone else? Are you drawn to a fear of intimacy or a marriage of convenience out of safety? Do you have a fear of financial dependency? Does it replicate a parent-child dynamic? So the magnetic draw towards shadow self in relationships, I'd like to tell you a little story, if you haven't heard it, about Beauty and the Beast. They are polar opposites. There have been numerous various interpretations of Beauty and the Beast. It's the continued romance of a vulnerable beauty and beast are connected with the emotional concerns of modern day life that represent what I call an inner journey, an initiatory descent into the shadowy, unknown aspects of the self. Their story is about not what you think, it's a transformative journey. The purpose is to redeem the disowned, split off aspects of the self and move towards a harmonious whole, not a merger state, but wholeness, from fear and naivety to fullness and a sense of maturity in each partner. In the beginning, Bill, our beauty, is deeply bonded with her father, and maybe this will resonate with some of you. Emotionally bonded with her father out of guilt over feeling she was the cause of her mother's death in the birth process. And she's also completely cut off to awareness of her own beauty, not only her physical beauty, but her inner beauty, and oblivious to the shadowy aspects of her handsome suitor, Gaston, who wants her to make him look good. Okay. Belle is so sweet-tempered, so devoted, and so self-sacrificing, we wonder if she can ever stand up for herself or nurture herself. So she nurtures others instead. She masks the disowned, mature, feminine part of herself, turning away suitors. She will remain unable to come to maturity while she still remains a self-sacrificing maiden to her father. And the father is not necessarily the personal father, but the patriarchy, aligned with the symbols and the values of the patriarchy. Now, in the story itself, she finds herself imprisoned in Beast's dark and foreboding castle and begins to explore the forbidden rooms in his castle. But really, that is symbolic of the mysterious, unmanifested rooms and aspects of herself. Beauty starts to open up to Beast, to become a little more vulnerable. And Beast, emotionally, initially bewitched, cursed, lonely, and filled with rage, makes the journey towards redemption. Beauty holds a mirror to Beast's feelings of ugliness, his anger, his sadness, and nurtures the goodness buried within. Beast, rather than devouring Beauty, stresses that she now has free will, which changes her and helps her make the shift from pleasing and serving others to being able to make decisions on behalf of the self. Her ego self, once hidden and trapped in unconsciousness, becomes strengthened, and she soon finds that she has a voice in behalf of the self. So ultimately, they are a perfect psychological fit. But the fairy tale and the myth work well with incorporating the shadow projections of a partner. The goal in our relationships and our work today is to help you see that each evolves and integrates the unknown qualities of the other into the development of the self. So with that story being told, maybe you'll hear Beauty and the Beast completely differently now, but what is your strength that you give away? And what is your weakness that you feel that you need somebody else to embody it in you? Are you drawn to your shadow in relationships? Maybe it's your deepest child's deepest innermost need, perhaps to feel visible, heard, understood. So we're going to go to the next slide, which is when we talk about the shadow, we also have to talk about the influence of family of origin issues, that narcissistic wound, needs that were not met in the family of origin. And I have in no way want to draw shame or blame into the family of origin, but to identify, the purpose is to identify unmet needs. So what are the relationship dynamics in the family of origin? Do they carry over in dynamics with your current or prior love relationships? For example, the dualistic thinking of top dog, underdog, dominance and submission, and drawn to that shadow in there. So what do I mean about a need? To be seen, to be heard, to be taken seriously, autonomy. You might have unmet needs that play out in relationships. Why, Nina? Why, Christine? Why, Loretta? Do you feel the need to nurture someone else when perhaps it's within you that unmet need to feel nurtured? So how do you ask for your needs to be met? These are important questions. Let's go to the next slide, please. We have the influence also of childhood stories and music on love and romance. And we need to become a little bit more intentional in our pick of music. The unconscious messages in stories and song are, I can think of many of them, as I'm sure you can. You are my soul. You are my inspiration. Stand by your man is a Loretta Lynn song, even though she was abused by him and gave everything to him. And you're the wind beneath my sail. Honors, but also puts one's own strength in a back seat. You're mine, but there's nothing coming back. Never let me go. Only you can make my dreams come true. Where in reality, we have to make our own dreams come true in order to attract the kind of person that will fulfill them from a sense of wholeness. 1 and 1 again make 3. So we move away from a merger state. How can we become more intentional in selecting music that can help us regulate our emotions? How can we begin to deprogram prior messages that we may have internalized through song with codependent lyrics? Although songs compromise the soundtrack of our everyday life, do you often notice the impact that they can have on your subconscious? Think about and explore the messages in songs and stories that may have an influence on your unconscious beliefs. How can we reclaim our power from invalidating themes that are so prevalent? Maybe you've internalized some of them. You can think of some of them now. Do any of you carry a song within you? Are there certain songs that resonate, that come to mind? Well, let's go
For
to
me, one of them for me is when I'm more reflective, it's My Life is in Your Hands by Kirk Franklin. And when I'm in my go get it mode, it's Live Your Life by T.I. and Rihanna.
You have a different song in your heart that you carry for different situations.
Yes.
Let's go to the next slide, Diane.
Mm-hmm.
Romantic love relationships are often loaded with unconscious expectations. We have an idealization of the love object, meaning the person that we're in love with. In the early stages, perhaps we transfer or project, put onto the other our own positive attributes, and thus obscure his or her imperfections. We don't see the real person. We have a veil that's put on by our own history, our own family of origin issues. We have to throw off that veil of transfers to perceive who that person really is. Who are we falling in love with? Are we perhaps falling in love with our very strengths that we put onto him and then are disappointed because they're not really there? So we have to recognize and value our own worth rather than project it onto a partner. Romantic love and power struggles are often a power struggle to get that person back to the way we thought they were, the one we fell in love with, where they were never that person to begin with. We weren't deceived by him or her. We did that unconsciously. Our own unmet need puts that veil, puts that onto the partner. And then we get seduced by our own strength, which is not there in him. So let's go to the next slide. I'm asking you here to think about your own role in the family of origin. What was your role? Were you the hero, the heroine, a caretaker, a peacemaker, a parentified child, meaning you took care of a parent who was, in essence, childlike? Were you the mascot, somebody who always had to lighten it up and make things better? Were you the rescuer? The glue, kind of the hub of the wheel, the glue that kept the family held together. So maybe you were the placator that made it softer and made things smoother. Or even the scapegoat. And the scapegoat is the one who gets blamed and subjected to the pain in the family, so the pain moves forward. Or perhaps you were the rebel, the one that carried the conflict and lashed out in behalf of the family. Identify your role. So if you were maybe heroically waiting to rescue a faltering family member, did you minimize abusive or violent family tensions? Are you a financial rescuer? Do you see a pattern? So if you could, please take a moment to think about your role in the family of origin. And let's talk about it a minute. Write it down, even if you choose not to speak out. Write it down so that we can keep focused on that role and see if it carries over into other patterns in romantic relationships. If anyone wants to talk about it, let's see, I have one person on chat, but I don't see what it says. I don't know if you can read the chat box, Diane, but
yeah, I'm taking a look right now. Someone said, KR said, I was going to share that I am attracted to, well, actually, this was a previous one about the warm people, but seem to attract cold people, right? Okay. And I don't see any other one.
Okay.
Oh, someone asked, what's a mascot?
A mascot is somebody who lightens up the pain in the family. who makes it okay, causes laughter, causes a little frivolity, causes us to lighten the pain, okay? Not make it better, but a distractor. In classroom settings, we see that happening for children who don't do well, who want to be a distraction from their own inability to do well. So they lighten it up, make it happy, make it when it isn't, when the real problem is not being addressed. So we don't look at the real problem, we look at the distractor. And the same thing happens in the family of origin, the mascot. Yeah.
Charlene, what is the placator?
The placator is the person who makes it all okay. When there's tension between the parents, mom and dad, or father and son, or mother and daughter, or whatever their dynamics are, the placator smooths it over, becomes like the negotiator, sees both sides, makes it okay. So the family maintains context. They don't divorce. They don't lash out. So her own or his own needs are never met. When these roles are taken on, they're taken on because the marital dynamic is not what it ought to be. And the parents do not have the ability to discuss and have tension and hold the anxiety and solve their own problems. The children in the family take on a particular role that makes the family stay together.
It looked like Lorraine, before you had raised your hand. Would you like to say something, Lorraine?
Yes, yeah, I would. Thank you. Hi, everybody. What it is I can relate.
Lorraine, we don't hear you.
I don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I hear you.
Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, I would say that of that list, I've been like a scapegoat because I used to be being of biracial background. My father was from Barbados and my mum's English, white. I was the oldest one of the 3 children my mum had. My mum and father had a child each prior to getting together, and then they had me and my younger brother and sister. And he died at a very young age, and I sort of like was always targeted by my mother and always seemed to be the one that took the rap for the younger siblings. And I feel that that habit has carried on throughout my adult life, that I've always been the fixer. There's a real fracture. I know all families have somewhere along the line a fracture in relationships where they don't talk or they fall out. But for me personally, I find that I've always been the one to keep it together as much as I can. I've got a brother and sister that don't talk. I've got nieces and nephews and my own 2 daughters that don't talk to their uncle.
So Lorraine, I have a question.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
In order to keep things together, do you take on and continue the role of the scapegoat?
Yes, I do.
So what we're going to do is look at the patterns and how they carry over and what else you could do about that. I really appreciate you volunteering this depth of information.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, each one of us has an unconscious role. And to be able to identify it like you have, we can then break that pattern that has carried over. So let's look at the next slide, keeping in mind what your role.
Can I just ask what the parentified child is, please?
Say that again.
The parentified child.
The parentified child occurs most often in alcoholic family systems, where the parent is unable to parent and the child becomes the parent, not sexually, emotionally, taking care of the needs of the parent, the mother or the father, emotional needs. Whether there's a sexual problem, that's a separate issue. So I'm going to ask you to write down briefly for yourself, the name of your partner, the attraction that was there, and then the dynamic, dominance, submissive, or reciprocity, and your role. Take a moment to do that so we can talk about what draws you to that person. And one, I think it was Nina said, to compensate for the inadequacy. But what is that? Or maybe that was Nina, or it was Charmaine. What was the dynamic in that relationship? And your role is, are you attracted, like Nina said, to nurture, to people who will nurture you? You need to be nurtured. Okay. And I would hope that you will see a pattern. And that's the goal here. Out of curiosity, write down also what caused you to leave that relationship. Sometimes we're attracted to someone with high energy because he lifts your depression, your depressed state, a state of depression. And then you depend upon that person. And then when they leave, it's because they have such a burden carrying you. So we want to look at those dynamics.
Charlene, should I stay on this slide? It's Diane.
Well, I would appreciate it if each one of you writes this down. We'll talk about it later because I want you to be able to see the pattern and your role and the energy that you're attracted to again. So please, Diane, let's go to the next slide. We're going to move forward a little bit while we hang on to what you've been writing. Relationships are full of hidden rules and messages. We have three different models: the traditional model where everyone has a clearly defined role, and the egalitarian model where each according to his abilities and his own needs. And then those with a mixed message where people are in a muddle, fumbling around to find a balance between freedom and dependency, offense, defense, like a football field, going from one end to the other, between exploitation and support, and dominance and submission. Marriages have become even more mysterious in recent decades, with the end of common assumptions about the meaning and purpose of matrimony. Couples can create their own private world and draw up their own rules. Sometimes they're autocracies, sometimes they're simply conflict zones. Intellectual equals or financial dependency can also change the dynamics in a relationship. What does financial inequality do to a relationship? Does it create loss of authority? Should it? No. But does it? Often. For example, what really drives me mad is that Henry doesn't seem to listen to me anymore. He says he earns the money, so the children are now my responsibility. Since I stopped working, I don't think I've any right to Henry's money. And though I often feel like the household doormat, I know he's never going to leave me. So I'm perfectly safe. Is this a healthy relationship? No. Did she give up her checkbook and her own earning capacity to turn it over to somebody else? Yes. But with it, she also gave up her sense of identity. So we don't often realize when we embark on a marital relationship how many expectations we have. The happiest couples are those whose partners tune out to share their assumptions. On the one hand, of course, we have the traditional model. On the other, the egalitarian model. And we enter into this most important contract with almost no discussion of our income, autonomy, needs, and duties. To have and to hold for richer and poorer is about as specific as it gets. In our obsession with romance, we act as if simply being in love is enough to make all the other questions irrelevant. But you know what? We wouldn't sign up for a temporary job without so little discussion of the conditions we're agreeing to, a job description. So why is it okay in a healthy relationship where it ought to show its whole face? Let's go to the next slide. In behavioral terms, love is an expression of affection and compassion, empathy, understanding. Boundaries are respected if we know what they are. And there's a healthy exchange of honest feelings and opinions. And different is okay. These expectations can only be manifested if I speak from an I position. I am who I am, you are who you are, and different is okay. I have my feelings and they're respected. I have my thoughts, I have my boundaries, I have my requests, I have my own mind, and they're respected. What a healthy relationship is not is emotional hunger or confirmation of oneself in the other, or dependency on the other. And I'm talking about emotional dependency. I am not talking about interdependency. I'm talking about a desire for a manipulative, possessive, demanding dependency that actually turns out to be a dynamic of dominance and submission where one drains the other. So let's go to the next slide, please. This comes from the story, the film, The Marriage Story, where every ending is also a new beginning, depending upon which poll you study. Between 40 to 50% of all marriages in this country of America end up divorce, but things don't start out that way, okay? Couples fall in and out of love, and the marital crisis is a final ending or a turning point, meaning a new beginning. In The Marriage Story, Claire and Nicole, Charlie and Nicole are our lead characters. It starts out well, the couple with a lot in common fall in love and get married. But over time, their relationship turns into a heartbreaking, emotionally exhausting, and legally horrific journey through the various stages of marital dissolution. The couple's lack of good communication and lack of recognition of the partner's unmet needs. In this case, Nicole's career goal. She believes she gave up her life and her work and her role for Charlie's. Why do some couples find it so hard to discuss these important issues or communicate openly and honestly about their need for validation, approval, and personal recognition? Instead, Immature dynamics force them to react from positions of control and rejected, manifested in yelling matches, disrespect, and rage. In the film, it's very painful to watch on the screen. It's an explosive communication style, becomes the obstacle for taking the next step. Resolution of the underlying issues never get met in this story. When we scream and yell, we just don't get heard. And in this story, it remains the couple's unmet needs. It's a slippery slope, a balance between I and we. Falling into these negative reactive states, they get stuck in one cornerstone of power. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide, which is a little different. This is the film, Why Did I Get Married? Which often we ask that question. It's an American comedy drama written and produced by Tyler Perry, which includes issues that cross ethnic and cultural lines. The story is about four best friend couples who meet together in a cabin once a year to catch up on things. The characters are based on real life members of Tyler Perry's own family. Okay. And they demonstrate that some couples can make positive changes no matter how difficult. One of the couples, the characters is a psychologist, and that played by Janet Jackson, who has written a book titled, Why Did I Get Married? So she and her architect spouse appear to be the perfect couple, but they're aching on the inside after the auto accident and the death of their young son. They're not dealing with the grief. Another couple, Angela's a hair care guru, and Marcus, an ex-football pro, who now works for her, can't stop bickering. They bicker on the drive up to the cabin and they bicker after they get there. Then there's Tyler Perry, who's in this place plays a pediatrician, and his wife, a work-obsessed attorney. And finally, and I'd like you to pay attention to Sheila. She's a beaten down housewife who's 80 pounds overweight, and her husband, Mike, who's having an affair with the ninth character who shows up, a hot chick single. As the week progresses, the couple begin to open up about their problems within their marriage. They grapple with issues of commitment, love, betrayal, and forgiveness. Mike admits to his affair, stating that Sheila's weight makes her no longer attractive to him. So Mike, in her not-so-better self, spends his days either needling her about her weight or cheating on her with Sheila. Devastated by Mike's infidelity, announces that her life is nothing without him. And their conflict forces the other couples to come together with these issues. This film has an optimistic ending, okay? And it's an important tool to offer awareness of dynamics of dominance and submission, which is very prevalent in the film. And I ask you to think about how many wives, such as Sheila, feel that they have no weight in the marriage, and that's one of the reasons they gain weight. Weight is a metaphor for the weight that one does not carry internally. How many women believe they should take a back seat to their man, even a cheating, deceiving one? The movie seems to reference the story of Tina Turner's rise to stardom with Ike Turner, and she definitely took a back seat to her man. To complicate matters, the woman that Mike has been having, Mike's been having an affair with, is also present at the weekend, at the week. And Sheila invited her. Why? So instead of working on their marriage together, Mike runs and Sheila lets him walk away with the house the cars, and his new money-hungry girlfriend who found a sugar daddy in him. Later, Mike wakes up and begins to realize that he already had a good wife who cared for the kids, kept his business afloat, and made him look good. But that's too late. The good part is that it gives Sheila a chance to find herself. So for her, it turns out really well. The other couples manage to resolve their marriage issues in different ways. So, the characters in the film show us the details of each other's relationships, and we're witness to the dysfunction in the dynamics of dominance and submission. So in case of Sheila, her weight problem is not about physical weight. It's the weight that she doesn't feel she carries in herself and therefore in the relationship. So let's go to the next slide.
Take a 7-day vacation. Who is this? I'm Trina.
Sorry, let me go to the next one.
I love this slide. It shows you that in a marital relationship, we all bring in the family of origin, and we can't help it. And they're in the bedroom as well. Whatever the issues were in the family of origin, come back into the marital relationship like baggage, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I just show you this clip for that reason. The next clip is the story of us, which is quite different from the first story of Nicole and Charlie. In the story of us, after 15 years of marriage, Ben and Katie are the characters in the story. We get a taste of happier times, the playfulness, the flirting, the courtship, and the falling in love. But after 15 years, things have changed a bit. And Ben and Katie's marital problems are severe enough to threaten their relationship. They are at a crossroads. They have to decide if they want to salvage their marriage or move on. In the beginning of the film, there's a scene in which the couple share a bed with their demanding parents, which forces Ben and Katie to acknowledge the family of origin baggage that each one brings into their relationship. It's a powerful story, a powerful territory, and insights are thus gained. So with that said, dissatisfaction can shake things up too, and changing the status quo of the relationship. Tired of the whole experience of trying to fix it, tired of bouncing around in pain, one couple walks away, as in the first film, and the other starts to look inside. So in a world where so many couples divorce, it would be ideal if all developed strategies to identify and resolve divorce and conflict when it happens. If only we could nip it in the bud by sitting down and having a creative win-win dialogue to better understand, even welcome, differing perspectives that might lead to growth, change, and outcomes that could benefit each partner. And my feeling is that both pleasers and controllers need to learn other ways of living in the world, and that is possible. And my solution is my math. 1 and 1 equal 3. They don't equal a merger state. So in this story, this couple solves their marital problems and moves on to healthier relationship styles. And what a lovely way to think that, why can't we all do that? And there is, what this story shows us are typical things that families go through. And it is conflict ridden. How do we resolve them? Do we resolve them according to old parental family of origin dynamics, because that's the known, or we look for new ways? And in healthy relationships, we look for new ways and we listen. Where you are not listened to empathically, we need to listen. So let's go to the next slide. this slide talks about relationship dynamics. These are essential to be able to identify the dynamics in your current relationships and in past relationships. Unfortunately, women tend to occupy a submissive pole to a dominant masculine energy. We have to be right or we're wrong. And that's the dynamic in many relationships, dominance and submission, power over to powerlessness. And we want to be able to push past that dynamic of dominance and submission, which is so evident in stories, in songs, in fairy tales, and in family of origin issues, the learned experience, maybe the unhealthy, unmet needs, and move towards one of reciprocity. Reciprocity means not equal, but the ability to be heard. I am important, and so are you. I need to be heard, and so do you. I need to be listened to. I need to be visible, not like Sheila, and so do you. So let's go to the next slide, where we have a duality of thinking. In the relationship dynamics, it's important to look at what I call duality of thinking and deficit thinking. In duality of thinking, it's very rigid, right, wrong, either or positions. Deficit thinking is that you can either be right or in a relationship, which means I have to be wrong. So our goal is to have a paradigm shift from the old role of control and sacrifice, denial of one's needs, the need to take care of others, okay? And let go of identified family of origin and dualistic superior, inferior thinking. Identify who am I, what do I want, and expose the internal critic of the fear of asking for what I need, that it's maybe not okay. And I say act from an adult emotional position, which means we move from these states of dominance and submission to an emotional position of reciprocity. Okay, we have to learn how to do that, to discern the self and our own needs from those of a partner. So what is to be able to, thank you, to request rather than demand. We play the game in duality of thinking, who's right? And one of us has to be right, which means the other is wrong. And we're going to move away from that, okay? Because it involves guilt and shame and wrong and punishment. The function, according to unconscious belief system about relationships, might be the enmeshment. We're in this together, my way or the highway. And we organize ourselves in terms of duty to authority versus, which is this, versus a dialogue. We want to be able to create a dialogue. Some people claim to be superior to others. A divine right of kings, superiority and domination then prevail. But we develop a language that meets the needs of others. The languages of domination, right and wrong, punishment and reward, and we classify people in terms of our perception of them. Rather, okay, in a domination structure, the top claim is to know what is wrong and what is right and maintain power through the use of blame, punishment, and shame. And I'd like to introduce a new word to you called empowerment, which is empowerment over the self, you guys. How do I empower myself rather than turn over my own power to a partner? So if one of you has to win and the other wrong, somebody always loses. Okay. Why is a relationship the battleground? Okay. Why do you have to be opponents where one in the beginning we fell in love? So on your paper, use a paper and pencil or a marker and draw a line to develop, to represent different relationships in your life. And then put a little dot at stuck places. So maybe there's many lines. Maybe there's only one line. But identify in your mind where you got stuck in the relationship. Was there a crisis at that point? And more than likely was the crisis, but what were the survival tools? What strategies were used to get out of the crisis? Was it your old role? Was it your role that brought you into the crisis? Was it a belief system that somebody has to win and somebody else lose? Are you seeing a duality of thinking? Did you fall back into old patterns with your partner? Or was it a turning point for you or the relationship? Did you get to a point where you couldn't tolerate anymore? Was your back up against the wall? Was that an awakening experience for yourself? Or was that a typical pattern that keeps perpetuating itself in multiple relationships? Our goal is to create awareness and change. And unfortunately, even though you may have changed, a partner may not choose to, and we can't control the other person. If your desire to keep the relationship is more than the desire to grow and be your best self, then you may have walked away or fallen back into the old pattern or maintain the sanctity, safety of that relationship. For those of you who whose religion might say we don't get divorced, then maybe this is a difficult question. Okay, how do you move forward? Divorce is not necessarily the answer to the problem. Looking at the problem, discussing it, and finding new ways is the solution. Becomes a healthy dialogue and growth for both. If you'd like to spend a few minutes talking about it, we have a little time to do that before we go on.
Would anyone like to share by speaking out loud or writing in the chat?
how can one in an abusive relationship where the other person is refusing to talk, so how can, and one might want to change and one might have an awakening experience, but the other partner doesn't. So even though divorce isn't the best answer, is that one of those occasions when the other partner, the awakened partner, etc., has to turn away?
On my end, it was choppy. So I heard part of it. I don't know if Diane, you could repeat it.
Yeah. Maybe Charlene, you could say out loud what you heard.
Bits and pieces.
Shall I say again?
No, say it again, please.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. It's all right. I'm chronically ill with disability, so I have to lie back, but I've come closer to my computer mic. What I was trying to say was, in an abusive relationship, and it's severely abusive, and one might have had the awakening experience and realizes, well, it would be good to talk about this if there's any hope that the person would change, but the other person refuses to even talk about it or go to a counselor, no third-party intervention. Would that be one of those crisis situations where you absolutely have to walk away then?
In a physically abusive situation where somebody's been beaten, there needs to be a whole lot more than talk. Okay, you have to leave for change to occur. And if we're looking at the dynamic in the relationship and the family role, I have to ask you, you don't have to say it out loud here, but to think back what you witnessed growing up and why is it okay for you to stay in an abusive relationship? Are you a scapegoat for his own pain, for his own conflicts and his unmet emotional needs? What is his injury? He has to work out. It is not your problem to solve his abusive history. He needs to get into Alcoholics Anonymous. There are different resources, and so do you. Rather than talking is down the road, getting clean and sober is the first issue. Allowing yourself to be beaten, no, that's not a talking point.
When I'm talking abuse, it's not necessarily physical.
You're still allowing yourself to be abused.
Yes, that's right.
And it usually escalates into something violent. It starts with verbal, emotional. There are boundaries there that need to be adhered to, and learn that you wait until you're abused, then it's already too late. There are boundaries that need to be addressed first in a healthy relationship before getting into one. There's a tipping point here, a slippery slope. And being able to identify that how far are you willing to go? Why are you willing to go to that point is the question. Why are you willing to allow yourself to get to that point rather than cut it off? What is your need? What is your unmet need? So we look at those issues prior to resolving his issues. I hope I answered your question a little bit, but
yes, you have.
He needs resources, and so do you. Yeah, but
I already say that.
Yeah. So
if the person is not prepared to talk because he can't possibly be wrong.
But in no healthy, we're looking for healthy relationships. And in order to grow, abuse cannot exist. We have to look at was that an early survival tool? This is a crisis situation. Staying with it might have been a survival tool in the family of origin. Now we're looking at creating change for you. And the turning point is, what do you learn about yourself, or are you drawn into another abusive situation? We have to look at those issues. You're great. You guys are great for sharing these things and opening up with such vulnerability.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who would like to share? I have zero tolerance for physical abuse. Now we're going to go into a clip by John Bradshaw on the family systems. Let me just say, John Bradshaw, let me give you a little history about John Bradshaw before we show you the clip. John Bradshaw was an alcoholic. He was raised in a family system of alcoholism, alcoholic family system. He then became clean and sober and became a pastor, and then a lecturer and a marriage and family therapist. And he speaks from a family systems mindset, a model of family systems, and he illustrates it with a dynamic which maybe will answer your previous question as well, or helpfully. This is, he talks about, do you transfer your idealized version of love onto your partner? Excuse me. And how do internalized childhood family of origin roles get generalized to adult relationships? We're looking at unconscious family emotional alignments that surface, okay? And they can serve as resistance in the family dynamic. So let's look at this now. What's the function of negativity to avoid and block intimacy? He will talk about that in this model, okay? I hope this little clip clarifies the dynamics and the interdependency that are embedded in the family system. If the belief system in the family is somebody has to control, it means somebody has to be submissive. That's the dynamic. And that's the dynamic that gets perpetuated in all other future adult relationships until we build awareness that this is unhealthy. So what we want to do is replace criticism with curiosity. I wonder why you think the way you do. I wonder why you feel the way you do. Validate it, back it up. I'm listening to you, and I'd like you to listen to me, okay? With what I call a witness perspective. Witness, reflect on what you see and what you hear, rather than mirroring it as being okay blindsidedly. Don't engage the negativity to become the ideal person for him. Don't reflect and mirror his beliefs, his system. Look at yourself. Who are you, and what do you want, and what do you need? Oh, so you're pulling away because you were scared to be close to me? That is a witness perspective. I see what you're doing. And the rage is a tendency to mirror his rage. You need to learn that if you go into your emotions, I don't. It's you. It's separate. I don't. Witness. What's happening? Question. What is happening here? Is there a loss of equality? Do I feel less than someone else? Am I being put down? Become curious and move from engagement into the content of the conversation to looking at the dynamic. Whoa, okay, we're not just trying to fix the problem, which is the content, because it perpetuates like garbage, okay? Same thing. We're going to address the dynamic instead by using empathy and getting past the narcissistic wound. So we become curious and move from engagement to equality. And that regulates the anxiety in the other person. Let's take a next step about narcissistic wound.
Charlene, can I just interject for a second? What you said just now was so powerful in getting to the content of the matter, going to the surface level. And I realized in my life, I'm so caught up in being a peacemaker of situations that it never really gets dealt with. It just gets glossed over. But I realized after listening to you just now, if I would just take the time, ask the questions, allow myself to be vulnerable, to hear and not be afraid of the interaction that might occur from asking those hard questions, my communication skills would develop better, and I would be able to be how do I want to say it? To communicate more effectively with my partner. But because I'm so used to shutting down, not allowing myself to go to that place of difficulty, things just keep escalating and never really solve. So what you just said right now was a game changer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Charmaine, for opening up and being so vulnerable. I mean, do you feel like you and I in this conversation are talking?
Yes, you're talking to my soul, because
this is the dialogue. This is what we want. Okay. And I so appreciate your vulnerability and your openness, and everyone who is here listening. I hope that I do trigger something new and a depth of awareness. Our soul needs love. And the fear of abandonment, the fear of conflict, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of somebody abandoning us, those are fears. They're not realities, because if you fear that, you've already been abandoned. And I don't talk about the human being, the person. I'm talking about the soul. Your soul has already been abandoned. So we're going to look at what is that narcissistic wound that came from the family of origin. And again, not to blame the family, but to look at they had their own problems, they had their own traumas, and our job is to move past it, to see it, to be aware of it, and move forward. So many families today were raised, so many people I work with were raised in alcoholic families. That doesn't mean it can't be healed, but you have to stop the drinking before they can be healed. And like John Bradshaw and others like him, there's a soul that needs to be heard. And the narcissistic injury is embedded in the family system. I am not going to show you the film Rocket Man, but I would suggest you look at it on your own. Elton John was raised in a severely narcissistic wound. If it wasn't for his music, he would have died long ago. And it's not narcissistic injury is not just a diagnosis, it's a family disease. In his family, I don't know if you can scroll it down a little bit, but he was completely abandoned emotionally by both mother and father. And grandmother had a little bit of empathy for him, but nothing was ever good enough, nothing. And he had this neediness stemming from the traumatic wounds of his emotionally deprived parental environment. And it led to all his addictions. His soul needs love. And Elton's steep sense of inadequacy, his falling apart, his shame of being unwanted and loved, led to an insatiable hunger for validation and approval, which he got from his audiences. But his coping strategies were addictions. So we uncover, what that wound is. his coping strategy was also the validation he got from his audiences. But let's go to another scene. This is an old movie, Rebel Without a Cause, where we have the narcissistic injury of the developing child. In Rebel Without a Cause, that's a movie from the 60s, late 50s and 60s, which is now a classic. And mutual attraction, well, James Dean in his character role, Jim, rebellion has its roots in narcissistic injury during childhood and not in any lack of material things. He came from a family of plenty of material goods, not wealthy, but very comfortable. But material things cannot replace a child's early experience of emotional abuse and neglect, or the sorrow of rejection, or the lack of nurturing to create self-esteem, or the anger and disappointment of never feeling understood or heard. In this case, the characters of fluent families lack basic knowledge about the real needs of their children. And they are meaning his counterpart, Natalie Wood. Instead, they focus on the acquisition of money, material things, gender favoritism, and what the neighbors might think. Each teen is seen reacting to the wounds left by their childhood experience and being raised by those who lack knowledge about the real needs of their children. Parents who were clueless about the concept of healthy narcissism and oblivious to the child's normal developmental needs for love, validation, and approval. So let's see what the clip. Oh, by the way, Jim and Judy, to go back to that mutual wound, the attraction is a mutual attraction by mutual unmet needs, which I think you'll see play out in this clip. Okay.
Before I play it, I want to apologize to everyone for these green lines that somehow appeared on all the slides. Didn't start out that way, but somehow, I don't know, they've appeared. So I'm sorry about that.
So what we see is Jim's father is too weak to give his son any guidance to what it means to be a man, resulting in Jim's fear of being thought of as chicken like his father. This fear nearly becomes his undoing. His deepest need is to have someone listen to him, give empathy and helpful advice, but his father is an empty well. Searching to be filled up by those who are equally empty becomes an unconscious pattern in adult relationships. Healthy narcissism is a concept lost on these parents who remain oblivious to the normal developmental needs of their adolescent children. Jim states, I'll tell you one thing, I don't ever want to be like him, chicken. Ashamed of thought of being like a coward, Jim also wishes he wouldn't feel confused and that his parents would listen to him, give him empathy and helpful advice. Another implication from Rebel is that mutual attraction to a partner, in this case, Natalie Wood, has its basis in similar but unseen needs and fears. You can see where Natalie Wood's character, her desire for love and affection from her father is met with unforgiveness and a slap in the face. The film teaches us to read between the lines and uncover what's been hidden. In so many adult love relationships, what often attracts us to each other isn't always what's healthy. Jim and Judy felt a mutual attraction, like soulmates. But the roots of this attraction are in unseen needs and fears. Both are blind to the mutual childhood wounds that drew them to each other. And although not verbally stated, both characters at depth felt like a worthless piece of shit. So Rebel Without a Cause reveals the desperate need that all children have for somebody wonderful to see them. Out of balance, we're drawn to our opposite, and then we put our best qualities onto the other. And the wound within is the inability to relate to our deeper inner self. So let's go on to the influence of that narcissistic wound. The injury, of course, is not being able to be heard or understood by the parental environment, where the true self is repressed, victimized, shamed, or banned to shadow territory, which we talked about before. And then the magnetic draw towards the shadow self in other relationships. What were your survival tools? Were you shut down, or did you speak up? Did you grin and bear it? Did you gravitate towards perfectionism, success, achievement? And the question is, do you use those same survival tools today? So let's see what healthy narcissism looks like. It's the ability to identify your own needs, find your own voice, and speak it. So let's see what new tools should look like or could look like. We're moving from emotional slavery, which is the merger state of dominance and submission, to emotional liberation. Okay. The problem of letting go of identified roles and dualistic thinking, either or positions, often judged harshly for identifying and revealing your own needs. And if your job has been to make everyone else happy, to the denial of your own needs, you may not even know what they are. You probably don't. And so feelings of being smothered, overwhelmed, and wanting to get out of the relationship, that often comes like a shadow over you. So what we're going to do is expose the internal critic, who says it's not okay to ask for what I need, that if I ask for what I want, so I do so in a way that reflects and reinforces the belief that I have no right to my needs, or that I say them with a voice in behalf of the self. This is what I need. This is what I want. And if you use the word selfish, take the ish off the self, and what do you have? Self. So this is what we're looking for, a self. And we have a paradigm shift to see this difference between moralistic judgments and self-serving needs, okay? And the puppetry of saying you're sorry for everything, which is not real, the feelings of resentment and anger, and shame gets banned to shadow. The old way is no longer okay. You are going to learn to find your voice in behalf of the self and articulate your needs. So we move to evaluation based on how needs are served others into what's good for you. So versus denying the needs of others, what we're learning to do is listen to others and speak up for the self. We move away from either or positions. We find a strategy to meeting the needs of both sides. In terms of time, I would like to move to the next slide. So we move away from the critical, submissive parent-child position, believing we are responsible for the needs and feelings of others, to and resentment and denial of our own needs, where one partner is angry at not getting their needs met and the other is resentful at being needy. So we have that state of mind, which is emotional slavery. The next stage often comes to an obnoxious stage where we have that rebellion of, I'm going to get out of that first stage. I want to move forward and no longer want to be responsible for the feelings of others, but don't know how to get out of it. So we refuse to admit to caring about others' needs. That's your problem. That turns out to be an obnoxious stage. And we want to move to a place of emotional liberation where we respond to with compassion, not duty, blame, or fear, but empowerment over the self, rather than power over the others. We don't want to just flip it. We want to go to reciprocity, where we accept responsibility for our own feelings, not those of others. So let's see. Can we show the next film of empathy? Because I don't want to run out of time. Okay, where we have empathy is to be able to listen without fixing it. So what I want to show you is a continued slide from Rebel, where we see what empathy looks like. If you didn't get it, you don't know how to give it, and you don't know what it looks like. So please watch this clip and watch Roy, who's the parole officer, and see what he does and how he presents empathy. So we see what Roy did. He observed, he witnessed, he did not engage with the content of the situation. He took a step back. So empathy is not an intellectual understanding. It's an emotional connection of the pain. It doesn't pass judgment. And empathy hears without passing judgment, without taking responsibility for you, without giving advice or trying to change your thinking. It listens, it hears, it heals. Empathy is a respectful understanding of what others might be experiencing. So we want to talk about what you need rather than what's wrong with the other. Become mindful and aware of how you defend against childhood experiences and unmet needs. Judgments of others are alienated expression of our own unmet needs. So identify and take responsibility of the need behind the feeling, behind that energy. Does he need to be heard? Is he not getting heard? What is it you need from me? What is it you're not getting? Okay. Become aware of the internal critic that feels unworthy, like a barrier. It creates a barrier in intimate relationships. The result is that we hint, manipulate, demand, the fear of rejection, deny, disapprove, and judge. When we express our needs indirectly through evaluations and interpretations, others hear it like criticism. Then they invest their energy in a defense or counterattack, like a football field, going from one side to the other. The more we directly connect our feelings to our own needs, the easier it is for others to respond. There's no magical thinking. I need you to listen to me. I need you to hear me. And so what I want to offer you is that we use the witness perspective to state what you see and hear. Conflict, anger, and negativity are based in not hearing the needs of others or in not recognizing our own needs. And in terms of time, it's sad that we see ourselves or anyone as failures instead of simply for not reaching our own best potential. And that is your personal goal, not to fix the other. So I would like to shift down to the next slide, Diane, where I offer some green flags for relationship issues. What should a healthy relationship embody? Okay. And support your personal growth. Practices self-care, self-reflective, long-standing friendship, empathy, vulnerability, spirituality, each person being self-sufficient. That doesn't mean not interdependent. It means that we can function independently of the other. And when we come together, we enrich one another. We can also be independent. I don't lose myself because I'm in a relationship with you. I enrich you and you enrich me. We can communicate openly in a healthy dialogue of problems. Conflict's okay. Difference okay. And we honor boundaries. And boundaries is a whole nother dialogue, a whole nother workshop. Boundaries are important to know what they are and define what they are for yourself. Kind of fun to have healthy hobbies as well, and each be independent as well as something in common. These I call relationship green flags. And I'd like to end our workshop today with a poem by the prophet, by Kahlil Gibran. The Almighty spoke again and said, "And what of marriage, Master? You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. You shall be together even in the silent memory of God. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but not make a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone. For even as the strings of a lute are alone, they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple, they stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow." And this is from the prophet. So I give you my heart, my soul. I hope that your soul is fulfilled, and I hope that I've answered some of your questions and given you something to ponder in this workshop. I've enjoyed giving it to you. And again, thank you so much for being so open and kind and loving. And if I didn't hear you, I'd be happy to listen to you and hear your questions now. Or if you write them, you can write to me at cgelt@earthlink.net. Again, it's cgelt@earthlink.net. And if you would like, if you send me your email, I can send you, I write a monthly newsletter called Emotional Fitness Update, and I'd be happy to send it to you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Charmaine.
Charlene, did you
Thank you, Joanne.
Is it possible
cgelt@earthlink.net?
now in chat, please?
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, everybody. It's been great.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Next week on Saturday, there'll be another 1 hour Follow Your Art's Heart workshop. It is Portland, Oregon time. It's 1 o'clock on Saturday from 1 to 2, and you can register on Eventbrite. And you're most welcome if you'd like to email me with any comments, thoughts, suggestions. I'm at, and it's on the slide here, I'm at Dr. Diane at mindmatterspc.com.
Take care. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Meg. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you,
everyone.
Lorraine. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Charmaine. Okay. And Meg.